Welcome to episode 14 of Westmarch Workshop. The public test realm has officially been open for a week now, and we have a lot of sexy info to share with you guys. If you're not sure, very sexy, if you're not sure what the public test realm is, this is where you transfer your character to a new server to test out the upcoming content patch while they're developing it. Then, after grinding for 100 hours, you realize that you don't get to keep anything from the PTR and have been farming in vain. So you go back to playing on the live server, figuring the patch will come out any day now. Only it won't. It's gonna take forever. Oh, and you know all those buffs you got to your class and your favorite legendaries? Yeah, they're gonna decide they were too powerful and crush your dreams once again. But there's always that awesome new feature. That awesome new feature that you just can't wait to play on the live server. Only what you don't know is, it isn't working as intended. And by the time it gets into the game, it will be a faint shell of the feature you once loved. So you'll head to the forums, and in a heat of passion, you'll write a brilliant forum post about how Blizzard can suck it, and all the trolls will agree with you, until you're finally shut up by a community manager who doesn't appreciate your tone. But do not worry, my fellow Nephilim. That's why we're here. We'll spend entirely too much time on the PTR and reading the forum posts that don't get taken down, so you don't have to. That way, when you finally lose everything you ever cared about, we can absorb the frustration for you. So without further ado, we present Westmarch Workshop. What happens on the PTR stays on the PTR. That's the first time our intro went longer than the intro music.
Oh, wow.
We have a long intro track, but
yeah.
It doesn't matter how many times you tell players that they don't get to keep what's on the PTR. There's always those few that are so upset when they find out that they were farming in vain.
Yeah, and this is like the one PTR where you should expect it, because this is seasons. This is a like mini prep for a season. Everything you do, you lose. It's gone. No more. Goodbye.
Yeah,
good night.
Story. Although so far no seasons in PTR, which I don't think it matters that much. I don't think I'd play on seasons in PTR. As Nineball pointed out, it makes more sense just to get in there and test stuff out. You'll see a lot less of it if you start all over on seasons.
Yeah. It's it definitely, PTRs themselves are just mini seasons every time, whether they're actually testing seasons or not. Everything you do, it's all done and you do it all over again.
Yeah. Yeah, every time I go to the PTR I'm excited, and then the game comes out and I'm like, oh yeah, I don't have all those awesome items. And somehow the RNG just gets way worse after.
I have not played as much on the PTR as you have, but my very first rift that I was running with my Demon Hunter, before I got DC'd and died, I had like 2 set pieces drop, one of the Shadows and one of Natalia's, which is double the amount of Demon Hunter tier gear that I've gotten the entire time that I've been playing Reaper Assault. So that was just frustrating. Within 5 minutes, getting pieces of it on the PTR, just like, oh, you.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I finally got my Depth Diggers, and it's gonna be so sad when 2.1 comes out and I don't have them anymore.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. But if they intend to start the seasons with the launch of 2.1, then it won't really matter too much.
True story. We'll be starting over anyways, those of us playing seasons. What else were you up to this week, other than dying on your fake Demon Hunter? This week, unfortunately, I suffered some really bad lag with the PTR, so I haven't been able to play it all that much. I've tried, and I'm on my 3rd copy at the moment, but yeah, and at this point, it's like I've just, with my connection being so bad, I decided to try and play softcore, but I wanted to play a Crusader, but, I don't have a softcore Crusader at all, so I went to start leveling one up. I think I got to like level 15 or so, and then it's like, wait, why don't I just level up a Crusader on live and copy my character over again? So that is what I intend to do partially over this holiday weekend. Get a Crusader to 70 on softcore so I can then copy it over and mess around with it on the PTR, because I wanted to play the Crusader on the PTR since,
when 2.1 comes out and seasons start, I'm going to focus most of my attention on the Demon Hunter, but I've been dying to play a Crusader, so that's what I've been. I have been dying, and that's why I've been playing a Crusader.
Very nice.
Funny how that works out.
Yeah.
But
and luckily they made it so you can transfer a character every 24 hours now.
yes, otherwise I would probably still be only on my second copy, wishing, what the hell is this? But what else did I do last week? I didn't mention it on last week's podcast because it hadn't been posted yet, but I recently did an interview with DJ Dreadscythe for his Scythe and Shield podcast. It's a new podcast he's just recently started. I think I'm just in episode 6, but he hasn't posted up. It's part of the Grind XP network. And yeah, and in that episode, he brought me on because he wanted to do an episode about lore and the story of Diablo and, potentially where it's going in the future. And obviously, that's story and such that's kind of my thing. So he invited me over there to talk about that. It's nice. Obviously I ranted a lot, and even though we're supposed to talk about story and lore, I ended up spending like 20 minutes on what it means to play hardcore, because it was like, what do you do in the game? What do you enjoy? How did you get into it and such? And so I couldn't talk about that without preaching about the joys of hardcore, because I am, and I guess I'm a televangelist in that respect, for the Church of Only One Death. And
that's most churches, I think. They believe you just die once.
Yeah, that is. It's funny how that works out. But yeah, that one I actually did last Monday, and it just got posted, I think, Thursday, so it was the night after we recorded last week's episode. But if you look it up, it's Scythe and Shield episode 6. It's a pretty interesting conversation that we had. It's about an hour and a half long, so, about the same length that our normal podcasts have been. Yeah, from there, it really was just, I played my first game of Warhammer Fantasy with my lizard people, and I won against, a bunch of undead. But no one cares about that. So how was your week?
It sounds very exciting. I wish I understood more about Warhammer, but it's on my list of hobbies that I would like to do and just don't have time for, or money for, I guess. It sounds like it can get expensive.
It can get pricey.
Well, I actually played a lot of D3 this last week. I hopped on right after our last podcast, so Thursday morning, hopped on, had to test out the PTR, got on my wizard, who is still Frostspect. They buffed the spells I'm using, super buffed Hydra. I think everyone, like all wizards I'm seeing playing, are using Hydra right now. I hope they don't have to tone it down, but it was a lot of fun. I really want to get the Depth Diggers, because they just changed it on the PTR, so they give you 80 to 100% bonus damage to your primary skill. So it was great for my magic missile build, and it took me so long. I think I got like 2 of every other legendary pair of pants before I finally got Depth Diggers, just like 6 hours ago I just got them.
Isn't that how it works out?
Yeah, you get, whatever you want, that's what you're not getting. For sure.
Yep.
Yeah, huge buff there. They rolled bad. I got 80% bonus damage, the lowest in the range, but still really good. 80% bonus damage to magic missile. I'm hoping they can find a way to keep these in the game without nerfing them, but I'm not very hopeful, because once your signature spells or resource generators are doing double damage, then they're effectively doing about as much as any secondary skill you might put on there.
For some of the classes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Which classes? You feel,
you have some, like just the monk, for instance, that even if you do the double damage for the generators, that's a lot of them, that's only going to be like 360% weapon damage. One of them you're going to have, I think it's one of the new runes that they added in for Fists of Thunder, is going to proc up to, I think, like 1,000% weapon damage. So that one definitely, but all the other builds still like pale in comparison when you go to use like Wave of Light. That Wave of Light still does more damage than the rest of them, but other ones like that you'd be using your Spirit on, like Cyclone Strike, you're not using it for the damage, you're using it kind of like for that utility.
Yeah. I imagine, like with my build right now, I can't even justify putting on a resource spender as like a spammable spell. Like I have Blizzard on there sometimes, and Hydra, Black Hole, but as far as just like a damage spell, it doesn't make sense to spend resource when I can do just as much damage without spending it. But Yeah, as you point out,
Yeah.
maybe it will make sense to use like spells that cost a ton of resource, just do a lot of damage at once, and you'll just be
Yeah.
more dependent on primary skills than you were originally.
Yeah, because thinking about it and just looking at just so you mentioned it, since you play a wizard, at the just the damage values, it's like you use the like taking arcane missile and then comparing it to arcane orb. There's like no contest on that one, and like maybe I guess like having meteor, but then it's like that one you have to kind of line up your shots a little bit, whereas missile you can just blast away. And that's
Yeah.
interesting. I'd never even really considered that for a class like the wizard, where the damage values are kind of pretty close to one another already.
Yeah, you're not getting any resource for casting your primary skills unless you spec into it, so they're, I guess, not as valuable there. Have to have some extra damage to compensate. But, yeah, I'm just worried that the Depth Diggers are going to kill a lot of those other builds, but Blizzard seems to think they won't, so I'm hopeful.
Hmm.
Archon's a lot cooler. I've been throwing around Archon. I tried out a cold build and a lightning build. Um, and yeah, using Archon actually makes sense now because it's not just for arcane builds. And yeah, so I started farming for the tiered rift keys. It took me, I think, about 6 rifts, which is, I think, what you said it took you.
Yeah, the one greater rift key that I've gotten here on my last copy, I got 6 rifts at tier one, torment one.
Yeah, so I was farming T4, then I went to T2 for a while, and then I was talking to Jh and some other people, and they were like, "Oh yeah, I got mine on T6," and it just seemed like it was dropping a lot higher. So I went to T6, and the first time I did one, I got one. Probably just lucky. But then since then, I've done 3 tier 3 rifts, 3 torment 3 rifts rather, and all 3 of them dropped a greater rift key. So if you guys know anything in the chat, let me know. I'm wondering if they ninja increased the drop chance, or if I just got like ridiculously lucky on the last 3 rifts.
Yeah, I mean I haven't seen any mentions of hot fixes on the PTR, any really clarification on whether the torment is like your torment level is going to impact your the drop chance of the greater rift key. On one hand, it would make sense because that actually gives you a reason to want to play the higher torment levels when you're farming rifts. Otherwise, people will just go back to the whole thing. Normal is the best way of farming, the lowest difficulty that you can, in order to try and just grind through it pretty quickly. And then,
Yeah.
because the tiered rifts themselves, the greater rifts, they're completely independent of your difficulty. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, I would hope that the higher torments would have a higher drop chance. Otherwise, yeah, I think it's going to be kind of like farming bounties on normal back in the day. You'll just do whatever's fastest to get that tier drift. And especially right now, because the greater rifts give really good rewards.
Hmm.
I dare I say too good.
I have not run one yet, so what's your experience been like so
I
far?
will tell you my experience. Actually, I have some testing here that I wrote down on this. Anyways, but I'll get to that in a second because when I first got into tier drifts, I just wanted to see how far I could get in. And I got, okay, so I did level 1. You start on level 1. And I was fast enough to jump to level 8. And then I did that fast enough to jump to 14. And 14 was still pretty easy. Got to 17. And then this is what got me thinking that there's still too much randomness in the greater rifts. When I got 17, it was, I think, Pandemonium Fortress, one of those layouts with just all the narrow hallways, a lot of walking without seeing anything. And cleared through 14 no problem, and didn't even get close to getting 17 down in time. And it was just really frustrating because I was like, I know I could do this if I had a better mob density,
Hmm.
and just like running through empty rift. It felt so bad. And then, by the way, 17's not good. My gear's not that good either. But I was able to redo it, and I got to 21 the next time, or rather, I beat 20. I got 21, but I didn't beat it. So on the leaderboards, 20 is my highest. Um, so yeah, I think it has a lot to do with, of course, elite packs, the layout, but I think more than anything, just mob density makes a huge difference.
Yeah, because the Pandemonium Fortress was one that was actually, I think Travis Day mentioned that that was disabled, from the actual rifts. Like currently, you can't get to the Pandemonium Fortress. All of those maps are disabled in rifts,
Oh,
and they've
I think they went in though. I think they added
Are
them
they
back
live
in.
on live or just on the PTR?
Oh, sorry, on the PTR.
Yeah, on the PTR, because that's what I was getting to. On the PTR, they're live again, and I don't know if that means they fixed the issues that they were having with it, or if they just have not been, disabled on the PTR build.
Yeah. But yeah, my opinion would be less randomness would be good. It's kind of frustrating sometimes. And there's also, like, if you're, let's say you can do about 20, and you're on tier, I don't know, 18, but you get a really good rift, and it's like super high mob density. You have an interesting choice to make, because you can rush through that rift and get a really good time, but then you're probably going to skip enough levels that you'll likely fail the next one, and then your highest drift will be 18. Or you can slow down at the end of 18 and just go up to 19, and you could probably get 19 or 20 or whatever. So it makes for some weird strategies right now, where it's actually, I think, sometimes worth it not to go as fast as you can, but actually to just barely beat it. And the other reason, actually the bigger reason that it might be worth it, is because you get a lot of loot running these tiered rifts. And once you die, of course, you have to go back to running regular rifts until you get another rift key. And so today I decided to test it. I ran, starting at 1, I ran every level, and I just tried to barely beat it. So like try to kill the Rift Guardian in the last minute. So I would just get everyone, and I counted the legendaries. So I will share with you. I'm just going to read the number of legendaries. This is from level 1 to level 18. And it's 0, 0, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 1, 2, 0, 1, 1. So on average, I got just under 2 legendaries per rift. This isn't a lot of evidence, so if anyone else has similar testing, I'd love to see it. If you do any testing on the PTR, in fact, we'd love to see it. So send it in to Westmarch Workshop at blizzpro.com. But just from this small sample, it looks like you don't get better loot as you go up the higher tiers. If you do, it's not significant. And I was getting just under 2 legendaries per rift.
Yeah, which, I mean, that in and of itself isn't that bad. I wonder if that will be addressed, even because I know the whole thing with the tiered rifts is that the main focus is that competitive aspect of it. But if it's not terribly rewarding for going through and getting those higher ones, it's going to be less inclination for people to do it. There's not as many people are, motivated to do it just for the sake of competition. They want to be rewarded for their time.
Yeah. Now, I think people who can farm really fast through T6 rifts can get legendaries faster than this. I was getting about 7 legendaries per hour. So, if you want to know if it's going to be worth it for you to wait a few more minutes to get that next rift, I would just test how many legendaries you're getting per hour normally, including greater rifts. And if it's less than 7 per hour, then you might as well just do as many of those levels as possible and try not to skip them. But my guess is that it will change. And Sparktite in chat is saying that they had very similar results. So, yeah, it just seems too good. I think the rewards are too good right now. Which I know people are going to hate me for saying. Don't nerf anything, buff everything. But
yeah, that will really come down with just how rare the greater rift keys end up being on live once it leaves the PTR. I would imagine that the drop rate is slightly buffed at the moment, just so that way more people get the keys and more people can go and test it out, and we might get a lower drop chance itself, so that way there's more of a community involvement behind it, and it's not just like, oh, I'm just going to go run into a tiered rift, and everyone just joins in, happens on because you've got a stack of 70 or 80 just sitting in the bank. If they make it a little bit rarer, it might be something you try to coordinate with friends a little bit more in order to, go and run them.
Yeah, I agree. I think maybe the best way to fix it, off the top of my head, would be, to decrease the drop chance of the greater rift keys if they're not already planning, and then make it so that the faster you clear a rift, the better your loot is. Like, incentivize people to actually try to get through it as quick as possible. But yeah, I guess we'll just see how they address that.
Yeah. Or, if you just make it to where that the once you it's hard to say, like you said earlier, that some people have gotten up to like, Rift 70. They've gotten into the 70s legitimately, because I know other people have, exploited their way into like 100 or so. If maybe the first 20 levels is just kind of like a flat, difficulty rate, and then once you get to like say 25, it actually starts giving you a slight bonus to your legendary drop chance as you go up from there. It might give people a little bit more incentive to want to keep going and have that reward. If you kind of shove a little bit more of the reward in the back end, so that way the better you perform, the more legendaries that you get.
Yeah. Well, there. If I can use this to transition into our news segment, there is a system very similar to that they have in to incentivize you to get to the higher rifts. It looks like the way that legendary gems are going to work is going to do that. They're not in the PTR yet, for anyone who doesn't know, but Diablo Fans has data mined a lot, and they've put out a list of all the legendary gems that are currently on the servers, not in yet, with their primary and secondary affixes. And as far as they could tell, around level 23 or 25, you'll unlock an artisan that exists inside the rift. So like you'll go in, like once you get 23 or 25, the artisan will be somewhere in the rift. After you defeat it, you can go there, and that's where you upgrade your gems. Now, apparently you also get the gems from doing greater rifts, but we don't know how that happens exactly. If it's just a drop or some
Yep,
kind of
because all of it at the moment is just data mine information. They're not live yet on the PTR, so we have no idea. But the information that was discovered is pretty interesting, and how that will actually tie in with your rift progression. Obviously, it can't just be something that happens on rift like 25 and then 37 and then 42 or whatever, because if you do really good on your time and you skip ahead of that rift, you can't. It's not like you can go back and find the artisan. But if they just always appear there, after you say like kill the rift guardian, and then they spawn before you go on to the next level of the rift, that would be an interesting way of doing it. And having a certain point tag, you pass this point, he learns a new pattern and can upgrade your gem to a new point or whatever.
Yeah. So yeah, 23 to 25 is nothing to gawk at. I mean, I couldn't get there. See, I saw Jh had gotten to 24. I'm trying to think other Avoid. If you watch him, his stream, he'd gotten up to 30. I think the highest overall for solo wizards I saw was like 35. But it must be a lot easier, at least right now, to do it in groups, because if you look at the leaderboards for 2-man, 3-man, 4-man, it goes up a little bit with each one. And like the top 4-man team right now has gotten to tier 72. Which is, it must just be ridiculous. I don't know how they finished that in 15 minutes.
Yeah, well, I mean, that just comes down to your basic, mob scaling. When you have 4 people, you would, have at a minimum, 4 times the damage output, but the mob's HP has only increased, has only doubled. Because it only goes up by like the 50% per player from the base.
Yeah, but it's a huge jump. Like the second place team is like 15 tiers behind them. And they're doing like double what anyone can do solo. So I mean, yeah, definitely.
What was the class makeup?
Oh, I don't remember. I don't have it open right now. Anyone on the PTR could. On the character screen, there's a new button for leaderboards if anyone wants to look that up and type it in chat. But yeah, I'm sure that's going to change a lot. Right now, it looks really easy to get the higher tiers, considering they were going to have a conquest to get to tier 30. But then again, once seasons come out, it's going to be a lot harder because you're starting over with nothing.
Yeah, that is true. That actually, it's not like it's going to be for those conquests, because they're tied to the seasons. It's not just going to be like who can log on first. It's going to be who can actually get there, get leveled up all the way to level 70, and then have the gear with which to actually do it.
Yeah, and how risky you play it. It plays a big factor, a bigger factor than I thought it would. Like you're constantly, because when you're racing through these rifts as fast as you can, you're constantly deciding like, do I want to just go all in and hope I don't die to try to get a few more seconds, or do I want to play it safe? Which I imagine is going to be a much more interesting decision for people on hardcore.
Yeah, that is going to be what is it that you're going to do? Because at some point you're going to have to be like, can I really handle this? Is it worth continuing? And at some point, what I think is just going to come down to for hardcore is just kind of going to be like, well, you're going to go into the rift, you're going to get your first elite pack, and then it's either you run away or you kill it and you stop, because it's like at that point, okay, it's just too risky. It's like as a hardcore person, because it's hard to have that mentality, if you have only ever played softcore. But when you've played hardcore, it's not that difficult to understand that you eventually get to a point where it's like, okay, I just have to stop. This rift or this group or whatever, it's gotten a certain combination of different elite packs that have spawned all in one sequence that it's not worth it. I'm just starting a new game.
Definitely takes a certain type of discipline to play hardcore. We got from Best Top ARPG that the makeup of the group that got to 72 was 3 monks and 1 barb.
Yes, I just logged on to the PTR and I went through and looked that up, and there's the next one behind them is 66,
Okay.
and that one is a monk, a crusader, a barb, and a witch doctor. I'm seeing, just all across the board here. I'm seeing monks, monks, monks. Every group is running monks.
This is going to make it so much easier to see which classes need buffed. I mean, not like it's going to be a set rule. If this class is getting higher, they must be overpowered. It's going to be based on the players as well. But with millions of players playing, it's going to be really easy to see, like, oh, this class is doing way better in tiered rifts. I think tiered rifts probably a good overall test of how powerful certain characters are.
Definitely, and that's also going to come down to one of those ones. I think that with just looking through this, both hardcore and softcore, the huge number of monks that are just like in almost every single group for these players that are getting these amazing tiered rifts down. That I think monks would be there regardless of the buffs that they received in this last patch, because they've always been like the most powerful support class, and they just greatly increase the effectiveness of all the other players, that just by having the monk there and hitting like Cyclone Strike or Exploding Palm every once in a while earns their keep without having to click a second other button. And so now that the fact that they have a chance of doing competitive damage in addition to that is just going to be ridiculous.
Yeah, definitely. And people in chat are saying that Wizard needs a buff, and I think for the first time in a while, I actually agree. I think Wizard might need a buff, because they're not doing too well on the leaderboards. But we do offer a good amount of support. With some of my builds can stun. Maybe I'll do better in groups. Maybe monks also will be a little more excited now that they are getting asked to play in groups more often. Who knows?
Yeah, I think it was never monks weren't getting asked to play in groups. It was just kind of oh, hey, can you come into the group, hit Flesh is Weak, and just hit your mantra every once in a while. Thanks.
Yeah, good call. Have you looked through these legendary gems and decided which one you want to go for yet?
I don't know. A lot of them, look pretty interesting. That mini conduit buff, once we actually have how much damage it does, could be interesting, because not only it's only a 3-second buff, but if it does insane damage and has a decent move speed bonus, that's just huge. For going through and just clearing rifts.
Yeah, and I guess the it's the movement speed that increases as that levels up, huh?
Like I think it is the movement speed as well as the damage, because those are the two ones that are tagged as value.
Ah, that's true. Yeah, Diablo fans had said that the primary one is static and the secondary one is upgradable. But yeah, maybe some of the gems, both of the stats are upgradable.
Well, there's some that list like the value percentage there's some that are just just going through and looking at it. There's like gain a 30% increased damage for 20 seconds after killing an elite pack, and then you look at the one below it, and it's increased damage against enemies under the effects of crowd control effects by value percentage. There's some that actually have like a hard-coded chance or percentage built in, and other ones that have just the value plug-in, which to me kind of means that's the scaler. That's the scalable, kind of
Yeah,
tip in there.
it definitely seems that way, because some of them it's the primary that's value and the secondary that's set, but
And there's some that are, that flip it with the secondary that's value and the primary that's set. There's some that are both, but then also there are some that are neither. And obviously that's not it's either that just hasn't been touched, but it's hasn't done anything.
yeah.
Since they're all going to scale, it's hard to say.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to see. Yeah, I'm wondering why Diablo fans said it the way they did. I definitely know the one I'm going for. Now that I have my depth diggers to get my primary skill damage up. There is, what is it called? It is now I can't see it all of a sudden.
The gem of primary skill hit harder.
Yeah, why can't I see it on the list right now? Anyways, yeah. Oh yeah, there it is. Increase the damage of primary skill by value. Primary skills heal you for 2% maximum health on hit. Yeah, magic missile build, electrocute build is going to be OP.
Yeah, that one is just made to go and work perfectly well with those new depth diggers. That's going to be pretty impressive. Some of those ones, it's just going and thinking about that and how some of those like additional items all go through and work together. One of the ones that they announced last week with the announcement of the PTR for like Demon Hunters was the quiver that made it to where when you fire bolas, when it has a chance on explosion to suck all the enemies in, that were in 24-yard radius.
Yeah.
You have that with Depth Diggers plus the gem that increases the primary skill damage on it, and that could actually be pretty powerful in a kind of pseudo replacement for a Cyclone Strike Monk. A Demon Hunter can now fill that position of getting everyone grouped together and then dropping spike traps down on top of them. Still not as good as Exploding Palm, but it'd be an interesting little thing that they could do. You have both of the dex classes have the ability to fulfill that role of pulling them all into one location, putting a damage increase, in their case, Mark of Death, but they don't have that sheer damage that the Exploding Palm damage has.
Yeah. Well, I think for sure is we can enable a lot of new builds, and hopefully they can balance it in a way that we end up with more builds once 2.1 is live, instead of just coming up with a few overpowered builds that make the other builds obsolete.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny that you'll go through and on the PTR they have a bunch of builds. Oh, this looks overpowered, that looks overpowered, and then a couple weeks into live, someone else has found something that no one else had thought of, that this is like the go-to build, this is the most overpowered thing, and then everything switches and people's perceptions change like just a few weeks into live, because there's so many other people that are playing it that even though you have these hardcore theory crafters, they just don't play on the PTR, or they don't have time, or they just completely skip it and they wait till the patch itself comes out and then they get to work.
Yeah, well, and also even putting thousands of hours into the game, it takes a while before you have access to all the different combinations of legendaries. And sometimes there's just some like off-the-wall build that no one thought was going to work, but with the right combination of items, turns out it's super OP. Actually, we got, if I could, since one of our feedback kind of ties into that, maybe I could bring that up.
Go for it.
Because someone had sent in a build that they had found, and forgive me while I find this, but it looks like it's some kind of glitch that's allowing them to do this. But they are using the item, the Grin Reaper.
Oh yes,
Voodoo Mask that allows you to summon horrific mimics when attacking for witch doctors.
Mm-hmm.
And what he's saying is the mimics that get summoned while you're attacking will cast the Spider Queen rune on corpse spiders over and over again. they how did he word it? I haven't seen this yet, but instead of throwing a single spider queen, they can throw an infinite amount. So I guess normally you can only have one queen out, but it doesn't apply to the mimics. Seems like a bug, but could be a cool build.
Yeah, from the way that I've seen that talked about, it's not just because normally you would think, well, you're limited to just one, so you summon a mimic, and then the mimic goes through and casts another one. That seems kind of really powerful with how much they buffed the spider queen and the spider queen rune, but that's not the case. They just keep summoning it, even though they're only out for just a few seconds. They might get 2 or 3 casts off per mimic that you summon.
Yeah, that's crazy. So thank you, Barisax? You know who you are.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Barisax.
Okay.
Baritone?
Maybe place the baritone sax.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I want to hear that.
Play us some saxophone for next week's episode. We'll use it in the intro.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it seems like it's probably a bug. So to answer your question, Barisax, I would imagine it would get fixed. But yeah, it would be cool if they, I don't know, maybe allowed it to be a build somehow. It's just hard to balance stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see them if they go through and change it, instead of allowing the clones to summon an infinite number of spiders, maybe just limiting it to where the clones themselves can only have like the one, and maybe putting some sort of limitation coded in for that item that maybe limits you to like 4 spider queens or 5 spider queens at any given point in time.
Yeah, that could be cool. We talked last week about Ramalandi's Gift, which is going to be a new item in the PTR, and I don't know if it's in there yet. I haven't seen it yet.
I think from some of Grimiku's comments is that no, it's not yet been implemented into the PTR yet.
All right. Well, they did clarify. They said, unlike how the patch notes had said that Ramalandi's Gift will add the maximum number of sockets to any unsocketed item, it actually just adds 1 socket to an unsocketed weapon. I'm guessing it must have worked differently before, because you don't just accidentally type that in the patch notes, right? Like.
Yeah, definitely. You don't just. There's a big difference between rolling the maximum number of sockets on an item, which if it was just for weapons, it would just be like rolling socket on a weapon.
Yeah, no need for maximum there.
Unless they're going to come out with new weapons that can roll multiple sockets.
But I guess my thinking is this is just the answer to the problem that weapons suck if they don't have sockets. Who knows how rare it's going to be, but I'm guessing it would be common enough that if you have a really good item, you can eventually get a socket in it without losing anything. Because, of course, this adds a new affix on it. You don't replace a stat with a socket. You make sure the item does not have a socket, and then you get an entirely new... You don't lose anything. You just get a socket.
Yep. And this is one of those ones to where now a socket was the most sought-after affix on an item. Now it is, once 2.1 goes live, it's the one affix you don't want on an item. To where if you have a 4 primary affix weapon with a socket, the socket is going to be the stat you reroll.
Yeah.
Who would have thought that?
Before anyone gets any smart ideas, you can't enchant the socket that you add from Ramalandi's Gift. So you couldn't just add a socket, enchant it to something else, add another socket. It's just a one-time thing.
And end up with a 22 affix primary weapon. It does everything. It
has all the affixes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, there's... I both like and dislike this new change. I like it because they're finally coming around and realizing that sockets are mandatory in weapons, and that it has to have a socket for it even to be considered. I know that's something that Travis Day had talked about in one of the live streams he did prior to launch, about how he was okay with weapons not rolling sockets, and that because they weren't that behind, and it's kind of like one of those ones that's just like, no, they are. If it doesn't roll a socket, it's garbage. You throw it away, you don't use it, you never care, regardless of anything else in the item. If it didn't have a socket. And then now with enchanting, it alleviated that a little bit. So as long as the other properties were okay, you could turn a garbage property, like vitality on a weapon, into a socket. And now they're just kind of like going through and being like, okay, they're backing down and saying, since it absolutely has to have a socket, we're just going to make it to where you have an item that then adds a socket to the weapon regardless of anything else. It adds a little bit more depth to it because you now don't have to trade things off. You can have, your main stat, damage percentage, and then something else. Vitality if you want a little bit more survivability, attack speed for a little bit more damage. You can have resource cost reduction on it for certain builds like cluster arrow, or you can even have something like life on hit, if you need a little bit more healing. All those things are just kind of thrown on the wayside because the other affixes mattered so much more than the other ones.
Yeah. I think it'll be a good change, but I think we still have the original issue that emeralds are the only things you put in your weapon.
Yeah, and that definitely is the next thing that has to be addressed. Is they're just so far beyond everything else.
Yeah, and I don't know if you remember, but on the anniversary stream, I think both Wyatt Chang said to JH and Josh Mascaras said on the one that I was on that, or at least very heavily hinted, that legendary gems were going to fix the issue of emeralds being the only thing you put into your weapon. And now we know, at least from what we've read, that that's probably not the case. Or, I mean, as far as we can tell, they're only for rings and amulets, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what they've said, is it's just for rings and amulets. It's not going to be for weapons, at least in Season 1. We'll have to see if they do anything different in Season 2 or 2.2 or 2.1.1, whatever they name the next patch. And if they add in legendary gems or some sort of jewel or dual color equivalent to actually give you a reason to equip something other than an emerald, or just change some of the systems around and buff the other gems, or hopefully not nerf emeralds. It would be better if they brought the other ones up to that level instead of like Ruby being just flat damage, giving it a bonus to damage percentage or something along those lines. It would be a bit easier to make it comparable with emeralds.
Yeah,
it's hard to say.
I mean,
I think
I was gonna say nerfing emeralds would be the easy fix, but I know it would cause a lot of rage as well.
It would be the easy fix, but it would also require a little bit of retunement because it's such a huge damage bonus that would make it would nerf your fun. It'd make the higher difficulties a little bit more difficult because it's just in order you'd have to nerf the crit damage on them so much to make them in line with even just rubies.
No, it's true. Yeah, they'd have to be at least cut in half for it to be a real decision.
The one thing that I would like to just go back to is, what Ramalandi's gift was, and then now what we're told what it is. At first, I thought it was great because it was something to do for any item, because sockets were mandatory on everything but rings and amulets. On rings and amulets, sockets were garbage. On chest, weapon, and pants, they were mandatory. Had to have them.
And then, depending on your build, helm.
Depending upon your build and helm, but almost anyone could benefit, from a socket in your helm, whether you were taking for the cooldown reduction or just for the survivability increase of the health percentage.
Yeah.
But now they've addressed it for weapons, but they're still not addressing it for the other items, and they're now making sockets mandatory for rings and amulets. Like, more so just looking at those bonuses that they have over at Diablo fans, legendary gems and those sockets associated with them for rings and amulets are now going to be even more mandatory than emeralds and weapons. It's something that they still need to just finally break down, remove sockets as a base affix from items, and just make it their own thing. Whether it's Ramalandi's gift or it's some craftable thing that you do through the blacksmith, they need to give us a way to guarantee getting sockets on items free from all the other affixes on them, and just make it some sort of consumable or craftable that just takes some grinding with which to go through and do, because they're mandatory. If your chest doesn't have 3 sockets, or if your pants don't have 2 sockets, and now if your rings and amulet don't have sockets, they're garbage. You're having to re-roll something else, and it limits what you can do with the item.
I see what you're saying, but I don't think that's at least in my mind, it's not a huge issue. Because I mean, for example, you need crit chance on gloves and amulets,
Hmm.
but I don't think we need an item that guarantees you crit chance on your gloves.
I guess, but there's a lot of things that you could do with gloves, because like if your gloves could roll, two sockets, that would end up being, almost mandatory for them as well potentially. I guess
Um,
not. It'd have to be three sockets in order to make it better than um,
10 crit.
not 10 crit, but your base stat.
Oh yeah, 750
Yeah,
main stat.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine with the fact that sometimes your legendary it just isn't that great. 'Cause I think the easier we make it to get the exact stats you want, the sooner you're gonna get the gear you want and not have much else to look forward to. I'm still really wondering why they're putting legendary gems in rings and amulets. I mean, the only thing on top of my head I can think of is that those weren't worth much before, and they decided they should make them worth something.
Hmm.
But
I can I could definitely see them wanting to do that because sockets were just horrid, for those particular items. Because rings and amulets, they're so stacked full of damage affixes that those were just huge sources of damage on those items. So you didn't want a socket. A socket was a wasted stat. And now it's mandatory, and it's so mandatory that it's like the Stone of Jordan. They're making it so it can roll 5 affixes, so you can get everything plus a socket on it now.
yeah, and I guess as we're talking about it, if they had put the socket on another item, then it would be more of a no-brainer. If it was on your shoulder or your belt or somewhere else, then you can get so
Hmm.
many good affixes on jewelry that you really have to make a decision there, a real sacrifice. But what really blows my mind is they added a fifth affix to some legendary rings. And I talked about this in my YouTube video, and the comments were like, oh yeah, they added the fifth affix so that you can put it into a socket and then put your gem in there. Which would make sense if they added it to all jewelry and if they didn't want you to have to make a difficult decision. If they wanted you to be able to have everything you wanted on your jewelry, but it it doesn't seem to be that way. They didn't add it to all jewelry. They didn't add it to the worst jewelry. They gave an extra affix to Stone of Jordan,
Hmm. Yeah,
arguably best in
the
slot.
the yeah the best ring in the game, bar none.
Like Compass Rose got one. It needed it for sure.
Yeah,
But why they gave one to Stone of Jordan? It just blows my mind.
people still won't use Compass Rose.
No, yeah, it's just no, it's horrible. No,
Stop trying to make Compass Rose happen. It won't happen.
you need to change one of those set stats into a decent stat.
Yeah.
No.
Um. Yeah, it's strange. I mean, I guess part of it is the way that people are going through and clearing. If you weren't able to use Stone of Jordan, or if you had to swap something out on the Stone of Jordan, that it would kind of break the higher, like kind of like that balance of allowing people to clear through, tier rift 70, type thing, because they have to have that particular group of affixes, and that they're kind of balancing that higher end difficulty, assuming that you're using a Stone of Jordan. Just like I'm sure they're probably going to be tuning a lot of that, assuming that you're using a Hellfire Amulet now at this point, so that way they'll be expecting you to have 5 passives.
Yeah.
I guess it makes it a little bit easier in that respect when they kind of have an idea of certain things you're guaranteed to have. Maybe that's the mentality behind it, but I still, yeah, I don't understand why they would give it to the best and not also include it on the worst.
Yeah, I mean, maybe as you pointed out, maybe they saw this as giving players more choice. Maybe they just gave it to the jewelry that had, 2 or 3 set affixes because they assume if it's only 4 and you have to have a socket, then there's no real choice. And there's not a range on sockets anyways. Everyone's just forced into re-rolling whatever it is into a socket. But I think ironically, we're losing some choice now because we're going to have to use a Stone of Jordan.
Yeah, it's you were using it before, and you continue to use it now.
Yeah, just have to find a new one, of course, because it will not retroactively get the affix.
Nope. But it'll give people to spend some of their blood shards on rings.
Yeah, those expensive jewelry might finally be worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. We got a lot of other stuff. Small thing here. Firebird set. Players are complaining still sucks, which I think it does. They say they're gonna look at it again, as well as some other sets that still suck.
Yep, that's good. They have the time to address it, so they might as well continue to look at it while the PTR is live.
Indeed. And one other thing I had found worth talking about was someone asked Lilira on the forums if they can farm the mats from Ubers now to make their Hellfire amulet when 2.1 drops. She said yes. Same
Yeah,
mats, so assuming that you
same
want to
exact mats.
play on non-season, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, you can start farming now, and then you can just make the amulet day one.
Yeah, I mean that's a great use of like the crafting system where it gives you incentive to want to do the Ubers now, and but then I guess that could also limit your kind of reward feeling because you're going to have 50 keys or 50 of all of the organs saved up. You go through and do it, and then you craft your 50 amulets so you get the one that you want with good stats, and then that's it. You're done. You've got it. Game over.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if the stats on the amulet will be able to roll higher than normal legendary amulets, kind of like they did with the vanilla Hellfire ring, or or if it's just going to be a while before you get that amulet with the stats you needed.
Um, yeah, it's hard to say. I guess that would come down to it would be nice, though I could see that benefiting certain classes more so than others. That some people, you kind of it's like, well, these are like the three absolute necessary must-haves, and my fourth passive is just kind of like whatever. And then now it's like, well, my fifth passive will just kind of be whatever, as opposed to like a demon hunter, at least as a hardcore demon hunter, is just like I want these six. So even with a fifth one, I now still have to choose. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess we'll just have to wait. I mean, it seems like there's already going to be so much randomness in it with trying to get the passive you want that it could just be torturous trying to get a good one. So, yeah, I hope it's not
Yep.
completely random.
It'll roll the passive that you want, but the main
Yeah,
with plus the
right.
health globes and like attack speed, and that's it.
That'd be so mean if they allowed it to roll the other stat while still rolling your passive.
That would be beautiful. That actually reminds me of funny thing that happened to me before Reaper of Souls. I was rolling Hellfire rings for my at the time soon to be Crusader, and I got a Hellfire ring. I didn't think about it with the whole smart drop system, and it crafts to your class. But I crafted a Hellfire ring with both strength and dexterity because I crafted a strength ring on my Demon Hunter.
I
So that was kind of funny.
didn't realize it would do that. So you just
I
automatically get both, huh?
Yeah, I didn't even think about it. Well, it guaranteed the strength, but then it rolled dex as one of the other stats because I was a Demon Hunter.
That's funny. It's too bad. Wait, but it's a lot of armor now. Yeah.
It was. I rolled the dex into something else
Okay.
once enchanting was enabled. But yeah,
Nice.
that was a strange little occurrence.
Was there any other news that I missed that we need to talk about?
No, I think that really covers most of what we had. I guess one other thing that I noticed that I guess hadn't really been talked about was they added a new stash.
Yeah, Ninja.
There's a yeah, there's a they just it's not even been mentioned. I haven't even really seen too many people talk about it, but there's a new stash tab that was added in when you log on to the PTR. I don't know if that's going to be permanent or not, but that's awesome. So we
I
now have a fifth stash tab.
They better be ready for a lot of angry Diablo players if they decide not to make that
Oh,
permanent.
definitely.
I think they're stuck with leaving that in the game at this point. If they know it's good for
Yeah,
them.
yeah, they don't have much of a choice now.
No.
Oh, dancing.
Oh yeah, you can dance. There were so many little ninja things. I remembered another one too that they did not announce for us to be surprised about, which I thought was kind of fun.
Yeah. You
Slash
can dance
dance.
if you want to.
And if your friends don't dance, they ain't no friends of mine, or however the song goes.
Ah, come on. Safety dance. I cannot know the
So
words to that
safety
song.
dance. I have to be singing it. I just can't. I can't just recite it. Anyways, slash dance works, and all the
Yep.
characters have slightly different dances. I don't think they're quite as good as like the WoW dances, but maybe that's for the better because players are already pissed off that devs are spending any time at all making
It,
players
it,
dance, I guess.
that is something that I do find incredibly funny about how much rage there is about them going through and doing that when they think, that the time that they spent going through and developing that apparently should have been better used doing something else. It's like, well, what could they have done with that development time? That would be rigging a new monster. Making it so that way Malthael can do the Macarena. It's like it's not like they can go through. It's the people that are going through and doing those character animations aren't the one that are designing class sets or developing new skills or new legendaries. They're just doing character rigging.
Yeah.
What else is there for them to do?
That's why I'm glad that a lot of dev teams are doing more to like educate players on how the development process works. Because yeah, there's a lot of people. I mean, the comments I saw were like, "Why are you adding dance moves in when we don't even have PvP yet?" And all these ridiculous
Yeah.
comments that kind of show a bit of ignorance as to how the
It really is funny that they think that it's just like five people that are making this game and they're in charge of doing absolutely everything from the art to the item design, and they don't realize that it's compartmentalized. It's different teams working on different things. You can have, someone go and work on dances and it not really affect most of the other game because that's all they do is character rigging and animations. It doesn't impact the amount of development time going into items or rifts or skill balances or particle effects for new abilities. It really doesn't have any bearing on it whatsoever. It's just some guy that re-rigs the character and tools around with how they run or how they move for that particular little dance move, and that's it.
Yeah, the people making the items probably coded the slash dance makes dance action happen, and that's probably the extent of their involvement.
And it actually is somewhat fitting, though I feel that it was a long time coming, because, I mean, you could dance in StarCraft 2 before you could dance in Diablo. I'm just throwing it out there.
So what's next? Hearthstone?
Yeah, I guess you're going to make your little
Card
2D
dance?
portrait dance.
Incoming. But yeah, the other Ninja edition, we talked about it last week because we had just seen pictures of it, but I have my own experience to share with the Treasure Goblin layer. When you kill a Treasure Goblin, sometimes a portal opens. It happened to me like day one of PTR, and then you can go through the portal and you're in Treasure Goblin land. I can't imagine it's going to be that common once it goes live because I made like 25 million gold in the 5 or 10 minutes it took me to go through there. Ridiculous amount of gold, and the boss fight at the end is like a full-on boss fight. Like they put a lot of time into this. The art's awesome all throughout. I got 2 legendaries from killing the boss from this huge chest. Like they put a lot of work into this for not having talked about it at all.
Yeah, and I mean that's pretty awesome. With the new art assets that they went through and made for it, because that was one thing that people were talking about since they announced the Treasure Goblins. Is just can I jump in the rift? I want to jump in the rift and go to Greed's Lair.
Yeah, it's so awesome. I'm pretty sure they have to have been working on this since before ROS launch. It seems like almost everything in 2.1 was supposed to be in Reaper of Souls originally, which makes me worried that 2.2 isn't going to be this awesome.
Maybe we'd have to see. What else are they going to do?
Yeah, probably not this much. This is by far the biggest patch we've gotten yet. Well, we don't have a build this week, but I thought maybe we would issue out a little challenge. We were kind of low on items of the week this week, and if you want to keep sending those, go ahead, especially items on the PTR. We'll pick at least 5 of them each week if we have them, but if you don't want to send items in the week, do this challenge with us. We're going to see who of the viewers of the show can get the furthest on solo greater rifts in the PTR. So I'm putting us I'm putting us up for looking through a lot of emails potentially. But from what I can tell, most of you aren't on PTR. So here's some incentive, I guess.
Yeah, so let's see what you got. Should we do it the person that can get the farthest, or should we do the farthest for each class?
Yeah, we could do like either the top 3 or one from each class. Like maybe we'll just see how many submissions we get and then decide that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the best way would be to, I don't know, I guess take a screenshot of the leaderboard itself. Maybe it'd be better if it was actually the text that comes up once you complete the rift. We don't want people sending in just whoever's on the top of the leaderboard and being like, "Hey, this is me." So
this is my character. Though they could easily do that because they would just have to take a screenshot of their own profile. You know.
Yeah. So profile page. We need it either like in the chat in the bottom or on your profile page on in game, somewhere where you couldn't just post someone else's, I guess, so that we know it's actually you.
Yeah, because you could just take a picture of your own profile and say, the best greater rift completed.
There we go. Yeah. And we were thinking maybe this week we'll do solo, next week we'll do 2-player. Who knows how long the PTR will be out, but it's usually like a month or a little more, so should be able to do about one for each before it goes live. Send us those screenshots. But I think that will take us into our item of the week section, as small as it's going to be today. We got a few submissions here from Supomi? Is that? I don't know how to say it.
I think so. Yeah.
All right. Well, the first, he actually submitted 3 items. Here's the first 2. Some nice Tasker and Theos. Gotten a lot of these. Almost max int. A little low on the attack speed. Rerolled the crit damage. Still potential to get those even a little bit better.
Yep. But these all 3 items that he submitted were basically for a pet witch doctor, and so he got some really good rolls on these items. So he got the 50% attack bonus on the Tasker and Theo, and then the other item, the Mask of Jerem, he got the 100% bonus for the pets.
Yeah, really nice. And then the other affixes also rolled pretty good. The int could have been a bit better, but his Jade Harvester chest also rolled almost max int and vit with some haunt damage and 3 sockets. How do the people that watch our show get so lucky? I think there's a correlation there.
I think so. You watch our show, you get better loot.
Fact.
You heard it here first.
Yeah.
Yep. It's built in. There is a connection between YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, and Twitch that if it flags your account of having watched or downloaded any of those, it will increase your drop chances.
Yeah, so if you guys are out on the forums or Twitch chats or anywhere and you hear people complaining about their loot, you can just say you probably don't watch Westmarch Workshop.
Mm-hmm.
And I bet you'll be right most of the time.
True story.
Yeah. All right, moving on. Simon submitted this SOJ pre-5th affix, but still very nice, especially considering he hasn't enchanted anything yet. So, potential for even sexier. Oh, we've gotten so many good SOJs, we're just like tainted. This is like, meh, whatever.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. You get one with it has perfect elemental skill damage, perfect elite damage. Then it's like, it's only 5.5% crit, and this main stat is, it's so.
Yeah, once you've seen a perfect SOJ, the rest just don't quite compare.
But I mean, people would kill for that. Especially, it rolled arcane resistance, which is one of the good resistances to get as a secondary stat. So that's one of those nice things. It's pretty decent just even in the secondary rolls. I don't play a witch doctor that much, so I don't know how good maximum mana is for a witch doctor. Though I know for like a demon hunter, that max discipline as a secondary stat is godly.
Yeah, I think max mana is still pretty good. Not as much as it used to be, but back when witch doctors didn't use primary skills, it used to be a little more important, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And the last one is actually just a bad item. Jeff sent us this Thunder God's Vigor that he thought rolled so horrible. And Jeff, I got two things. First of all, I love the idea of sending in horrible items.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for that, and I hope this inspires other people to send in horrible items. But second, I almost didn't show this just because, to be honest, Jeff, it's not that bad. Like it's not good, but it's not bad enough for it to be a spectacle. But I decided that we should show it anyways, just because this will set like a precedent. Like people beat this. Show us your item that's worse than this.
Yeah, we want to see your crappy items too. So go ahead and throw in. If you think that you've got something that could be worse than that, let us know.
Because we get all these submissions with like near perfect rolls, there has to be some inverse of that with just almost as bad as they could be on every stat.
Yeah, we were talking about this before the show, and it actually seems like it'd be more common because it almost seems like there's actually something. The RNG isn't evenly weighted across the board. There's a greater chance for it to roll bad than it is for it to roll perfect. So we should actually be able to see more crappy items than good ones, unless they changed it in Reaper and made it more of a bell curve.
Have you seen any testing on that? Is that just like your own intuition after playing, or?
That is kind of how it was in Classic. It was very hard to get, it was weighted more towards the low end than the high end.
Was that was based on people testing, or is this just based on like general opinion?
That was just based on kind of like data collection. Skimming the auction house and finding items that are listed and seeing what the stat ranges people were actually fighting in those stat ranges. Of course, is a little bit. I don't know how you'd test it for how it was weighted because it was only kind of items that were in the auction house.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I guess you'd imagine items in the auction house would be better than average. So if they're still showing lower than average ranges, that seems to be a pretty safe bet.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's interesting. I had never even thought about that. I'd always assumed it was pretty even throughout. Well, that is it for our items of the week. I think we can get into the feedback. Just one more reminder that if you want to send us items of the week, challenge submissions, or any feedback, it all goes to Westmarch Workshop at bluespro.com.
Yep, that is Westmarch Workshop at bluespro.com. That's one that we still always get questions on Twitter and such. Is where should I send my feedback, or where should I send my items?
Yeah. People tend not to fully listen to podcasts nowadays, I think. We're just kind of floating on in the background. They catch what they want to, and we try to throw out that feedback email a lot.
Oh, I know. It's kind of like how I listen to podcasts and such. Is I'll have it playing while I'm doing other things. So if I have a podcast playing while I'm playing Diablo, if I'm in a rift and it gets into like a kind of a sticky situation, I don't hear what they're talking about in the podcast. Or I might go and get a drink, or I might talk with the wife, or go to the bathroom, and I'll miss a 5 or 10 minute segment of the show, and just completely miss what it is that they said.
Yeah. I feel you. Well, did you want to take the first one from Mark?
Sure. There's a one. This came from a conversation that I was having on Twitter with a fan. It is from Mark Kazra, I think is how you pronounce the name. Kazira. That he also goes by Unspoken. And it's just he was thinking of ideas for what would be a cool barbarian set bonus, like if they were to add in a new barbarian set. And one of the things that he had thought of, the intent of what he said was make it so that way Call of the Ancients like summons with chains, kind of like the Chains of Torment from the Demon Hunter Sentry build. So they're all linked together and they have like fire chains going on between them, so they run through and can burn enemies and such. But what he ended up typing was canes. And that just triggered this mental imagery of you use Call the Ancients, and it just summons a bunch of clones of Deckard Cain, and they go and run around and start smacking the enemy with books. Or if anyone remembers the old April Fool's joke of the archivist class. They can cast Lornado, and you just have this tornado of books go through and start spinning at the enemy. That would be awesome. That'd be beautiful. So if anyone from Blizzard is listening, please make that happen. Make something to where Call of the Ancients summons Deckard Cain instead. That could that could even be like an April Fool's Day joke where all companions and pets that you summon for one day become Deckard Cain instead.
I wonder if they could use the Deckard Cain model some. Like, I wonder if they'd have to make a new model if they could just throw that out as a projectile.
I don't know. Yeah, that would be interesting because they did something similar for that with StarCraft 2. They brought in, like, there was a unit that they were testing around with in the Heart of the Swarm beta, the Warhound, and they ended up cutting the unit completely from the game, but it's kind of like an April Fool's Day joke. They added it in for like a week or two to where all of your workers use the Warhound model instead. So regardless of your race, if you played Zerg, instead of having drones, Warhounds were your workers, and they'd collect your minerals and stuff. So that'd be one of those little funny things.
That's pretty funny.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the next one is also from a Mark. This one goes by Crypt. And he was asking about the Unity. So I'll explain really briefly. If you have a Unity on you and your follower, it will split all damage taken by one of you with the other one. However, if you have a legendary token for your follower that makes it so they don't take any damage, then you'll just take half damage, because all the damage given to them is just negated. And so it's a really nice trick if you have two Unities and one of those invincibility tokens. You should probably be using that when you're running solo. And Crip's question was, if he has the Ashura set, which lets all your followers be out at once, and they all have a Unity, and they all have the invincibility tokens, will he only take 25% damage? And the answer is yes. Although I've heard from some people who tested it that it's not quite that much for some reason. But yes, it will stack. You'll get more damage reduction for every follower that has a Unity. And yeah, I haven't actually seen someone running that, but you could actually run that even in a group. You wouldn't even need to be solo, technically. I mean, it wouldn't be as good because they're not always out, but anytime you're... Or wait, Ashura's... Are your followers always out? I can't remember if it's a proc or not. I haven't seen that.
It's a proc, but yeah. it's a pretty good uptime on it.
So yeah, hope that answers your question. And Crypt also said he put a two-piece set, the Litany and Wailing Hosts, on his follower, but he's not seeing the set bonus proc that brings out skeletons. And as far as I can tell, things usually do proc on your follower, so I'm surprised.
Well, this is one I have to say that I'm not sure, but did they ever actually activate set bonuses for followers? Because in Classic, they couldn't benefit from set bonuses.
Yeah, that's probably what it is. That makes sense. Because yeah, all the legendaries I've seen still proc, even if they're on followers, but yeah, that's probably...
Yeah, legendaries will, but a follower could never gain a set bonus, is what it was in Classic. I don't remember ever seeing them change that for Reaper.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm sure that's what it is. I think they might as well. He asked, do you think they should proc? I don't see any reason not to, especially since Litany and Wailing Host suck. Might as well give them some place to do something good, I guess.
Yeah. What would be cool? It's like if they could benefit from Leorix. They have the Leorix Gorget, and have them, spawn the skeletons when you got a kill bonus.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, too bad your followers don't get many kill bonuses.
Yeah. Too bad. Let's see.
What about Hardcore Project?
Yeah, I was pulling that one up here. There's someone, Dr. Checkmate, submitted this one. It's a hardcore project. He goes through and just says that he loves going through and listening to our podcasts and watching some other streamers like Kakakaze, and his interest in the game has been increased since then. He's recently beaten normal on his Barb, Monk, and Crusader, but he's only played hardcore a small bit. But thanks to my constant ramblings and ravings, he's decided that he wants to go out and try hardcore, but not just any hardcore. He wants to give himself a challenge behind it. And he says, I wish to start a hardcore character, but not any hardcore character. It's a character that goes through each and every difficulty level and progression in story mode with an ever-increasing number of bounties and rifts per difficulty. So normal would be 1, like hard would be having to do like 4 sets of bounties or 4 rifts, expert would be 9, going on and going on and on, but then doing all of it solo. I plan to also chart my XP, gear, and damage progress. Do you have any suggestions or advice on how to best accomplish this goal? For that, it definitely sounds like a great idea. You might want to pace yourself a little bit more as you get into the higher torment difficulties, because it is going to take some serious grinding time, going between each and every step. Once you get into the torments, it doesn't take that terrible much in order to get into Torment 1. Depending upon the class that you play, usually it's somewhere around like 5 to 8 million toughness, depending upon whether it is you're playing a Crusader or like a Wizard or a Demon Hunter. And then from there, it's going to be dependent upon the legendaries that you have drop, which will dictate everything else, like what type of stats that you need, what type of damage it is that you'd be comfortable with.
I'm glad to see that Nineball pushing his hardcore agenda on innocent children has worked once again.
Yes,
and
affecting the minds of millions.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool idea to like change it up, because sometimes Diablo can get a little repetitive, so it's nice to have a way to change up the gameplay. But I did think I should at least point out that if the goal is to gear up as quickly as possible, which it doesn't look like it is for Dr. Checkmate, but if your goal is to gear up as quickly as possible, stay away from story mode. Just as a disclaimer, so we don't throw off anyone. Rifts are going to be the best way to farm, but yeah, this sounds like a nice project.
Yeah, I definitely would like to see the progress, or how that goes along. How much progression. When and what type of gear he had when he died. To kind of see what it was. That he could do. Like what he feels that he could do differently. Or like when he dies or what he dies, what he would choose to do. Like what his skill set was. Things like that. Or just how interesting, how long it takes for him to die. It could be interesting in seeing, because with a lot of the changes that they've made in Reaper of Souls, people have started new hardcore characters, and they don't die until they're like Paragon 20. In Torment 1, and Torment 1 seems to be that killer. You don't really have much of a challenge until you feel comfortable and you take that first step, that even with good gear, just a bad pack combination can spell doom. But it's pretty fun. And also at that point, you'll kind of have a taste of whether it's worth it or not once you have that first death at 70 with a couple Paragon levels and some decent gear. Because like I've said, always in the past, I fully understand hardcore isn't for everyone, and you could go through, you could try it out, you could have a lot of fun, and then you lose that character, you die, and then that kind of feeling of loss isn't compensated by that adrenaline you get while playing the character, and then just that's it, you're done. That's perfectly fine. No one will think any less of you.
Indeed, well, someone will. It's the internet, but
yeah, this is true. The entire internet will think less of you.
That's all. Well, the next question has a little bit to do with console, and I'm embarrassed to say that I haven't played the console version of Diablo since it first came out. I mean, I played it a lot the first week, and I haven't played it since. And I don't know, are there any aspects of adventure mode in there yet, or is it not until the expansion comes out for console?
Yeah, there is no adventure mode or anything like that for the console, and then you can only get that unlocked if you buy the Reaper of Souls. Yeah. So, on the PS4 and the Xbox One, it's just going to be the Ultimate Evil Edition, which will have everything. Or if you already have it for, I guess you don't even actually need the original game for the PS3 and the Xbox 360. When you get Reaper Souls, you can just copy your character over.
Oh, yeah, there you go. So his question, of course, is what exactly is a bounty? And this explains why you haven't heard of bounties yet. You're playing on console. But on Reaper of Souls, once you've beaten story mode, you can go into adventure mode, and then bounties are kind of like quests you do throughout the world that gives you rewards, one of which is a rift fragment that will allow you to do rifts, which are randomized, multi-leveled zones that have much higher drop chances. So overall, adventure mode's just a faster way to farm, and it's more streamlined, so you don't have to go through all the story over and over again.
Yeah, and one of the ones like that they were just going through and asking is they went to go and do just an Act 3 run, I imagine, in story mode, and they bring up the map. Instead of just giving you your area map, when you press that key, if you've never played Reaper of Souls before, it brings you your waypoint map. And they're just like, "What the hell is this?" This was it's one of the new features that they added in, that they changed the way that the whole system works, so that you can actually teleport to waypoints from anywhere in the game. You don't actually need to be on a waypoint in order to go to them. I imagine you probably haven't played through much of Act 5, or I don't even know. From what it seems, they've not actually even bought Reaper of Souls. They're just logging on to Diablo 3 Classic on the PC, and it's the first time that they've played in a while. Everything is kind of transitioned into Reaper, and what Archon was going through and explaining about the bounties in the rifts. You have to beat Act 5 in story mode in order to unlock the adventure mode. So you have to have Reaper of Souls. And that the whole big thing, there's no longer farming routes anymore, like you had with the old Alkaiser runs in Act 3, or the Festering Woods or Decaying Crypts in Act 1. It's now you kind of you either run bounties on normal, which is you go into the map and there'll be like waypoints that are flagged, and they have little icons that say go here, kill this, or complete this event. And people will go there. It's a thing called split farming, where everyone will take an individual bounty in one act, normally Act 1. Is the most popular one because it has the only reward that will benefit you in the later end game. And everyone will go pick a different bounty, they'll go and complete it, and you get a little bit of experience, and then once it's over, you get a reward for completing all the bounties in the act. And from there, you get rift keys, which then is the big farming thing now for both experience and items, is you use these rift keys, which that's when people will progress into the higher difficulty, like Torment 1 through 6, and then you do your farming there. It's just a run through a whole bunch of randomized zones of randomized monsters that you get to kill and get loot from.
Yeah. That was Ty's question, right?
Yes, that was Ty's question.
Yeah, well, you said everything, I think. That was pretty good. We got a really interesting one from Frederick here. He asked, what is your thoughts on additional blood shard vendors, and how should they work alongside Kadala? And he gave the example of vendors that you'd have to unlock by doing certain quests, bounties a bit more difficult, or maybe some vendors are only accessed during holidays. I thought it was a pretty cool idea if you had more options on what you could do with blood shards. It'd be hard to balance, but it could be interesting.
Yeah, it would be interesting. It was one of those ones, they've not mentioned it since the launch party, but they briefly talked about wanting to do in-game events for holidays.
Yeah.
The stream just died there for a second for me.
Oh, okay.
But
I think me and your connection have been wavering a little bit.
Okay. All right. Continuing. They mentioned about wanting to do these in-game events, but we've not seen anything since then. I guess they've been wanting to get 2.1, out the door before they even bother thinking about it. But there's some things that they could do, and just looking at what they've done in, World of Warcraft, obviously, or what some other games like Riot has done with League of Legends for their holidays, you could do something where instead of Halloween, you have, I believe it is, dang it, now I'm losing my lore cred. It's the Night of Lost Souls. It's kind of like a Halloweenish type event. It's like one night of the year when kind of the realm of the dead, the barrier between the realm of the dead and the realm of the living weakens, and so the souls of the dead can come back and walk the earth. That would be an interesting one that you could, have some sort of tie-in where there's additional Nephilim that come back and they have vendors, and you could do maybe not necessarily like super OP items or anything like that, but that would be a good instance of you could go through and have a Blood Shard vendor that has all the same things that Kadala does, but a small chance at also giving you some type of like maybe just a holiday themed item, that maybe you get a mask for a witch doctor that instead of summoning fetishes, you summon little dancing pumpkin people, just as kind of like a flavor thing, or just transmoggable gear would be something else that's interesting. There's a lot that they could do. That's a really good idea. I like it for kind of a flavor aspect, how they could do it of warranting different Blood Shard vendors to compete with Kadala the entire time. I don't know how they'd really be able to balance that.
Yeah, I like the idea of having an in-game holiday where the dead come back to life, because I think it'd be cool if you allowed players to play their dead hardcore characters for like just that day.
That would be interesting. I would almost enjoy that.
Just one more revisit with that character you put 500 hours on and have been missing so dearly.
Yeah, it would have to be, in order for it to work, it would have to be on its own separate realm. Like, you have your hardcore character and you can go and you can play them, but it's only in its own little contained realm and you can only play with other dead hardcore characters. So you don't gain any experience, it doesn't copy over any of your items, but it is its own like separate realm of death that you can go through and play and just have like, funsies with your character.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good way to do it. But I think, I don't know, maybe people would be upset if they didn't play hardcore, but I feel like you could give them like Paragon experience, or maybe even some loot they could pass on to lower level hardcore characters. Some incentive just for playing on that one day.
You could get your character's ear.
There you go.
Uh-huh.
Nice.
Knight of Souls. There we go. I had to go and Google it. I'm sorry. I failed you all. But yeah, it's the Knight of Souls.
Yeah. But yeah, additional ideas for Blood Shards. I mean, really, the place that Blood Shards take in the game is they make up for bad luck, right? Like, you've really been wanting that one item, and you just can't get it. Well, this is a higher chance that you get the item you want. So I think it should still fill that void somehow. Somehow help you increase your luck. Maybe it could have something to do with new legendary gems if you're not getting the one you want, or maybe something in enchanting where you could have a higher chance to get the right affix that you were trying to get. Something to decrease RNG in your favor.
Yeah, or maybe a vendor that only offers the seasonal legendaries.
Yeah. You just have to pay a bit more for it.
Yeah, a bit more, and have a slightly crappier, chance at giving you a legendary, but it's more targeted.
Yeah, that could be really cool. Well, I think that was all our feedback. Unless I
there was another question from Bob the Titan.
Oh yeah, I think we went through that one. That was the one about bounties. We talked about. Yeah, we did that one. That's why I was asking if they have bounties and stuff on the console yet, unless you buy the expansion.
Oh, okay. I guess they're very similar. That we had that one as well as Ty. I guess I thought you were reading from Ty's.
Okay, that's why I was confused after you read Ty's. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we answered those two feedbacks in one.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, we talked about Tom's feedback there earlier. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much covered it all. I'd be looking to hear more from Dr. Checkmate and see how his little hardcore build goes. Whether he enjoys it, whether he has fun with it, or just him tracking, what he finds across all of his plays. What his kind of damage, his gear acquisition is like.
Yeah, it's a cool idea for a challenge. I'll start the outro music now, giving Lineville the heads up. But yeah, keep sending us your feedback. We had too much feedback before, but now we don't have enough. So challenges, as far as your leaderboard position goes, or items of the week, or feedback, all go to Westmarch Workshop at blizzpro.com.
Yeah, so yeah, and you can of course follow us on Twitter at Archon the Wizard and at 9ballgamer, and subscribe or listen to us on iTunes or Stitcher. We have had some other feedback about people asking us to subscribe to another service for podcasts.
I hadn't heard of it, but we'll look into it.
Epix, yeah, that one is kind of it's out of our hands as far as that. We have to speak to the boss about getting signed up for one of those services. So we'll let you know.
Yeah, but yeah, if you want to watch us live, it's on twitch.tv/ArchonTheWizard every Wednesday around 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Until next week, keep farming.
Keep grinding. And keep dying.